I got my mistress pregnant. We need to break up. That's how my husband Camille apologized to me in such a flippant manner. I was dumbfounded, and my affection for him ran out. It was exactly 6 months ago. Is the mistress someone I know? Yeah, it's Kyra. Remember meeting her again at Alice's wedding reception. Since then, my husband seemed completely unashamed. Alice's wedding was the year before last. So you've been cheating for over a year? Alice was a college classmate of mine, and the mistress Kyra was a junior who 2 years behind me. She was in the same research group as Alice, and we played tennis together in college, so I remember her well. She was nicknamed Little Devil behind her back, and was quite famous in a way. Huh, oh, is that so? Time flies when you get older. My husband just laughed it off. What on earth is he thinking? I can't understand him at all. I'm Viola, 30 years old. I met my husband in the college tennis club. Despite him being 5 years older at 35, the reason he knew me was that he was an alumnus who often showed up. He loved happy hours, had lots of friends, and was friendly with everyone. He took great care of the freshmen and was a kind person. I only realized that it was limited to girls after we started dating. I was made to cry many times due to his cheating habits back then, but I loved him and married him right after graduation. But once I started working, I got to know the real him, or rather, his useless side. The reason he frequently appeared in the tennis club's clubhouse, acting all high and mighty with the juniors, was that he was completely ignored by his peers. The truth was that he was so incompetent at his job that he wasn't given any serious responsibilities, so he had a lot of free time. Even now, there is no prospect of a raise or promotion. He's just a pretentious good-for-nothing who can't do his job or household chores. He is utterly useless. I tried various things to change my husband after we got married, but his refusal to change made me give up. The reason I hadn't divorced him was not just that work was busy and it was a hassle, but also because his parents were good people, a reason that had nothing to do with my husband himself. So, look, we need to split up quickly because of the baby coming. You can have this apartment and I'll leave. That's the end of it, okay? I was taken aback with his careless words, and my husband with a sly grin. What? No way. Let's part ways cleanly. This is not a good opportunity. As I neared my 40s, I started wanting a child. I had graduated college and started working as a full-time employee. I was earning more than my husband, and my company had great parental and maternity leave benefits. I was ready for a baby, but it wasn't happening, and it was heartbreaking. There was no love left for my husband, who had an affair and got the other woman pregnant. I wanted to completely and cleanly end the relationship. What made me even angrier was that he didn't apologize at all. He just spoke his needs and demands without any remorse. It was clearly time to end this unpleasant relationship that had lasted for years. We'll involve a lawyer, ask for compensation, and divide the property. Of course, we'll request something from Kyra too. What? I don't have that kind of savings, and Kyra's pregnant. I don't want to stress her out. Well then, why don't you take on the debt and pay for it yourself? It's your affair that caused this separation, so take responsibility properly. When I glared at my husband, he raised his hands in surrender. I guess I have no choice. Maybe my dad will take on the debt for me. With that, I moved forward with the divorce and hired a lawyer. I received multiple calls from my in-laws, pleading and begging me not to leave. My father-in-law even cried, saying, "If Viola leaves him, he's finished." And my mother-in-law begged, "Please reconsider, Viola. I love you like my own daughter." But I couldn't go back. After revealing everything about my husband's constant infidelity and laziness at home, even they finally understood. "We are truly sorry," they said, bowing their heads in shame. They even paid the compensation in a lump sum on behalf of my husband, who had no savings. They made him promise never to ask for their help with debt again and to repay them promptly. I still can't understand how such a careless and irresponsible man came from such decent and responsible parents. I'm going back to my parents' house. The divorce process, which I had thought would be a hassle, was over before I knew it. I returned to my recently relocated family home, and half a year passed by. I had stopped thinking about my ex-husband, busy with work on weekdays and cleaning the house on weekends. I received a call from my best friend, Alice. Alice was furious from the start. "Viola, did you know? Your ex-husband Camille and Kyra, they are living in a new high-rise apartment and bragging about it everywhere. Kyra just called me for a baby shower party. The presents have to be over $100 and the participant fee is $100 too. It's insane, right?" she yelled. I didn't know that Kyra had given birth, and I didn't understand why she had even contacted Alice. My ex-husband knew it, and so did Kyra. They both knew that Alice is my best friend. Why would Kyra even invite Alice? She must know that Alice would tell me everything. When I said this hesitantly, Alice's anger erupted even more. She did it on purpose, on purpose. That horrible woman said, "I'm so happy now, thanks to Viola breaking up with Camille." Can you believe she would tell me that? She's the worst kind of person. I want to put her in her place somehow. Little devil from our student days has finally grown into a demon, hasn't she? In college, Kyra was a bad woman, meddling with the men of happy couples. Even if couples fought because of her, she kept a calm face. If they break up just because another girl shows interest, it's not true love, right? They'll break up eventually anyway. So, what's the big deal? She would say, stretching her words in a saccharine voice, smirking. I pitied her, thinking she had never truly loved anyone, but I wasn't naive enough to get involved with her. I decided to keep my distance. For now, I didn't care about Kyra. There was something else I couldn't ignore. Alice, speaking of which, there's only one newly built high-rise apartment building, right? Did you hear when they moved in, or anything? I've never met them. Alice quickly answered. Apparently, it was very recently. They were bragging about getting in luckily because a spot opened up. It seemed someone who bought a new high-rise apartment had to relocate for work and had put it back on the market without moving in. I see. That makes sense then. Viola, your moving day is this Sunday, right? The baby shower party is on Saturday. So, you only have to be careful for one day. There are plenty of elevators, and the entrances might be even different. You're right. We haven't met so far, so it should be fine. Alice and I laughed together, but an unexpected situation still occurred. On Saturday, I ran into my ex-husband and Kyra in the first-floor elevator hall. My ex and Kyra were getting off the elevator, and I was waiting for it. Our eyes met perfectly, and there was no escape. "Hey, Viola, what are you doing here?" My ex-husband was the first to speak. Then Kyra chimed in. "Viola, are you here to celebrate with us? You wanted to see our adorable baby, didn't you?" Her voice was bright and sweet, her face smiling, but her eyes weren't laughing at all. What? Seriously? You came to participate without an invitation? To observe? To see the high-rise apartment? Or our prince? Hearing the baby referred to as baby and prince was irritating. That's not it. I was just waiting for the elevator, I said, consciously, switching to a polite tone midway. Camille was my ex, but now a stranger, and I didn't want to cause a scene here. Huh? So you're planning to come to my house after all? You are so silly, Viola. Stop being so stubborn. You're probably just jealous that we live in a super luxurious high-rise apartment and that our adorable prince was born. You still love me and feel lonely, don't you? Just admit it, you wanted to see me again. Viola, that's not acceptable. No matter how much you love Camille, I'm the one he's married to now. It's a crime to barge into our home uninvited. Jealous, are you? Kyra, you're really cute. So sorry, Viola, but Kyra and our prince are my priority now. So you're not welcome here. I hadn't seen my ex-husband in 6 months, and his thoughts were as outlandish as ever. Kyra also seemed completely incomprehensible. My cheating ex-husband and his new lover were a perfect match in a way. I regretted wasting my precious 20s on my ex-husband. I'm utterly ashamed of having dated and married Camille. I wish to bury those memories in darkness. I should have left him sooner. I had not made excuses and just broken up with him. I wouldn't have had to listen to this nonsense from my ex-husband and his lover. I was shocked, but my words seemed to have struck a nerve with my ex-husband. What's that? You're really lacking the charm. Learn from Kyra. Even her jealousy is cute. She's just giving birth, but still takes the effort to look stylish for me. Don't you think she's admirable? Aren't you embarrassed to be wearing such cheap clothes and no makeup? Not embarrassed at all. I was just going to the grocery store. I was wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans. They weren't ragged, but they were clean. That's exactly the problem. That's why I grew tired of you. Enough already. We have nothing to do with each other. Just go home. Annoyed by my indifferent tone, my ex-husband waved his hand as if shooing a dog or cat. No, this is my house, actually. That's why I was waiting for the elevator. What? Seriously? You're lying, right? Viola, that joke isn't funny at all. Seeing their unbelieving expressions, I had no choice but to explain. I've been living with my parents in this high-rise apartment for 6 months now. My father was approached by the salespeople when there was talk of selling the land he owns here. They told him that living in a high-rise would be more convenient than a single-family home, especially as he's getting older. But it's not like the entire grounds of the high-rise was our land, it was just a part of it. Still, enough money came in from selling in, and during the negotiations, we were able to move into one of the higher floors for much less than market value. What? You are landowners with that much money? If I'd known, I wouldn't have broken up with you. Give me back the compensation money. There was no need for a property settlement, was there? That's a separate matter. The compensation was a result of your affair, and the property settlement was a settlement between us as a married couple. I sighed. Glancing at Kyra, who was mumbling to herself without saying anything, I caught, I can't believe Viola is living in a high-rise. I thought I had totally won. Kyra glared at me and said, But Viola, you don't have a baby or a loving darling, do you? I haven't lost yet. Look, I was never competing with you, Kyra. I'm actually thankful to you for giving me the opportunity to break up with Camille. Oh, and I'm moving out of my house tomorrow, so I don't think we'll see each other again. What? Why? You just moved into a high-rise. Both were surprised, but I shrugged. Maybe it's a matter of different values. It just wasn't a good fit for my family. I found living in a high-rise wasn't suitable for hanging laundry outside. There are no balconies on the higher floors for safety, and only some windows can be opened. It wasn't suitable for my mother and me, who want to dry our laundry and bedding in the natural sunlight and wind without using a dryer. Plus, the sunlight was intense, and it was too hot even with the air conditioning on. It shakes quite a bit even with a magnitude 3 earthquake. Apparently, the building is designed to sway to prevent collapse, and the higher floors shake more. It was terrifying. Most stressful of all was the daily elevator ride. It gets pretty crowded during the morning commute, and it takes time since it stops on each floor. The advertised 3 minutes walk from the station ends in the elevator. We were too bothered by the drawbacks unique to high-rise living, so we decided to live in a regular house with a garden after all. Luckily, our apartment sold quickly at almost the same price we bought it for. As I briefly explained, both my ex-husband and Kyra grinned. Oh, so we'll never see each other again. So, a high-rise wasn't suitable for commoners like you. It's more suited for an elite celebrity family like mine. I couldn't understand how he came to that conclusion, but one thing became clear. What I grew to hate and gave up on was that part of you. Pretentious, but with no real ability to back it up. Unwilling to change or make an effort. I became utterly fed up with you. But it's okay now. You're unfixable. So, goodbye. I repeated my ex-husband's words, giving them right back to him. Stepping into the just arrived elevator, I glanced at Kyra, who's glaring at my astonished ex-husband and me. Right before the doors close, I add one final remark. By the way, are you sure the child is really yours? What do you mean? My ex-husband looks at me, utterly confused. I mean, exactly what I said. Right, Kyra? You know what I mean, don't you? The doors closed then, so I don't know what happened next. In reality, when we were struggling to have a child, I underwent tests at the gynecologist's, and the results showed no problem on my end. So I started to wonder if the problem was with my husband, but he refused to get tested. That's why I left that insinuating comment. After that, I heard a story from a mutual friend who went to Kyra's baby shower. Despite bragging about living in a high-rise apartment, my ex-husband had been living on the 3rd floor. Plus, despite demanding expensive gifts and participant fees, the only food served were cheap snacks from the grocery store. When a friend softly complained, Kyra reportedly exploded, saying, "You should be grateful to see my baby up close and pay the money, of course." The atmosphere quickly became tense, and even though my ex-husband tried to mediate, things escalated into a massive fight between him and Kyra, resulting in a total mess. All thanks in part to my earlier cryptic remark. It seems my ex-husband and Kyra had moved into a high-rise, but life was tough, and they were trying to swindle money from their friends by fabricating reasons. Apparently, my ex-husband let it slip, and their friends were furious and left. As for me, I successfully moved into a single-family house with a garden and started living with my family. Recently, I began keeping an adorable kitten. Our former high-rise had been found to have significant defects and illegal construction methods, and it's been in the news every day. Now, even if they want to sell, they can't. We talked as a family and concluded that maybe we were surprisingly lucky. I'm very happy now. My ties with my husband are severed, and I've achieved peaceful days. On a day off in the afternoon, as I fold the completely dry laundry, my kitten sometimes falls asleep on the clothes. Seeing that adorable sleeping face, I think to myself, today was another good day.
You are so plain and cheap. My mother-in-law, who has a taste for luxury, repeats her sarcasm every time she meets me. My mother-in-law, who loves first-class goods, says that a woman like me is unworthy of being her son's wife. One day, my mother-in-law, who made fun of the cheap things I wear, poured wine on the dress I was wearing. Stop it, you cheap thing! My mother-in-law, who has told me so, later turned pale when she learned the truth. My name is Isabel, a 28-year-old housewife. I married my husband James 2 years ago, and since we have no children yet, we are enjoying a carefree life. Married life with my kind husband is peaceful and smooth. We are even talking about having a baby soon. I am in the midst of such happiness, but my relationship with my mother-in-law, my husband's mother, is not so good. My mother-in-law, Kate, has been very critical of me since we first got married, and even after 2 years of marriage, we have not been able to build a good relationship. I tried to get along with her, but she doesn't seem to want to. My son wanted to get married. I wonder what kind of young lady he would bring. She's very plain or simple. She's not very nice. Perhaps I had made a bad impression on my mother-in-law at our first meeting, but these were the first words she said to me. Perhaps she was trying to tell me that I was not a suitable wife for her son. My parents are a normal working couple, my father an office worker, and my mother a nurse. But my mother-in-law said that as a child of such a family, I did not fit in. I can't believe your mother has to work too. They must have been very poor. My mother-in-law said this with a pitying look in her eyes when she heard about my family. My mother-in-law, who had been a housewife since her marriage and had never worked, laughed and said she had never experienced such hardship. She also proudly told me that she grew up in a wealthy family. From a young age, I always wore things that were nicer than the other people around me. Cheap things don't suit me. That's why I raised my son to know what is the best. I didn't know how to react to my mother-in-law, so I always tried to cover it up with an affectionate smile. It is true that I prefer simple clothes and makeup, which may not suit my mother-in-law, who prefers glamorous things. My mother-in-law always wears fancy, luxury brand clothes, accessories, and makeup. You don't know what good things are, do you? You only know about cheap stuff, don't you? I wonder why my son chose her at all. I raised him to know what is good. After boasting a lot, she always ends up putting me down. Since my husband and I got married, my mother-in-law and I have always been in this kind of situation. However, she is also sarcastic to me when we meet occasionally, and I don't mind it too much because it's something I can just ignore. But my father-in-law and husband are kind to me, and I didn't think it was something I needed to take care of. And there was one more person who welcomed me kindly into my in-laws' home. That was my grandmother-in-law. My father-in-law's mother, who is my husband's grandmother, is a little over 80 years old, but she is still in good health. My husband's parents have 2 houses on a large yacht. and parents-in-laws and grandparents-in-law live in each of them. Both houses are magnificent mansions, and I was very surprised when I saw them for the first time. The land was cheap, and we had a carpenter who built them cheaply. It's not that magnificent. My grandmother-in-law replied with a laugh. My mother-in-law proudly talked about how her house and herself, but in reality, it was largely due to the achievements of my grandparents-in-law. In spite of this, my grandmother-in-law is not snobbish and is very friendly with me. Thanks to that, I didn't mind when my mother-in-law annoyed me. It feels like I have more grandchildren. Well, we don't have any female grandchildren in our family. My grandmother-in-law said so and loved me very much. If possible, I would like to get along with the three of us women, but the reality is that it doesn't work out that way. Still, I am glad that I can get along with my grandmother-in-law. Although I do not actively associate with my mother-in-law, I have a good relationship with my grandmother-in-law, like going out for lunch or tea with her. One day, my mother-in-law called me. It's my birthday next month. I've decided to have it at our house this year. Come and celebrate with my son. She invited me to her birthday party. I said I would definitely go. Let me tell you something. We're having a big party this year to celebrate my 60th birthday. All of our relatives and friends will be there. I'd appreciate it if you dress appropriately. My son will be fine. But you're not going to be dressed like you always are you? I'll be embarrassed. My mother-in-law told me to come dressed properly and hung up the phone. What my mother-in-law meant by dress appropriately was probably her favorite top-notch brand name clothes. I was stumped because I didn't have that kind of clothes that would be appropriate for such a party. But when I talked to my husband about it, he told me not to worry about it, and we decided to dress a little more formally. Then came my mother-in-law's birthday. The party was to start in the late afternoon, so my husband and I went to a department store in the morning to pick up a birthday gift for my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, who is a luxury-minded person, would be happy if I got her something luxurious. Also, she wouldn't complain if I told her my husband had picked it out, so in a way, it was easier for us. After we finished picking out the gifts, we had lunch together and went home to get ready to go out to my in-laws. At that time, I received a call from my grandmother-in-law on my phone. Come to my house now. I explained that I am out of the house and that I am going home now to change. I then told her that I would show up before my mother-in-law's party. Just come to my house, dressed as you are. My grandmother-in-law says that I don't need to change my clothes and that I should come home right away. I wondered if it was something urgent, so I went to see her. I asked my husband to go home and get changed. We were going to meet at my in-laws later. I went to my grandmother-in-law's house. My grandmother-in-law invited me into her house with a laugh. She was laughing and telling me about my mother-in-law's party. It looks like a really huge party. Various things have been delivered to their house since this morning. From my grandmother-in-law's house, I can see the entrance of my in-laws' house, and I hear all kinds of vendors have been coming and going since this morning. I heard that a big flower arrangement had just arrived, and I could see that my mother-in-law was very enthusiastic about it. My grandmother-in-law said, "My daughter-in-law does a great job," and took me into the sitting room at the back of the house. The room was lined with several Paulina chests. My grandmother-in-law opened one of the chests and took out something from inside. "Isabel, you were told to come dressed properly today, weren't you? I'll give you my dress so you can wear it. This way, she won't be able to complain. My grandmother-in-law said with a smile, and held out a dress in front of me. The beautiful and well-maintained dress was her pride and joy. It's a good one. I don't wear it much anymore. It would be a shame to keep it put away. I thought it would be a good opportunity to give it to you, Isabel. My grandmother-in-law said so, and also took out the accessories that went with the dress from the chest. My grandmother-in-law seemed to have noticed my mother-in-law's comments. So, she recommended that I go in a splendid costume today so that I would not be blamed. I don't know anything about dresses, but from the way that my grandmother-in-law talked, it must be really expensive. When she said she would give it to me, I was puzzled. I can't accept such a thing. I'm sorry. My grandmother-in-law responded with a kind smile, pushing the dress towards me, saying, "It's okay. It's okay. I know you will take good care of it. That's why I want to give it to you." With these words, my grandmother-in-law begins to dress me. With her brilliant hands, she had me dressed in no time at all. I haven't worn a dress since my 21st birthday. My grandmother-in-law laughed and said, "I see. I have not worn a dress for a long time either. This is a good opportunity, isn't it? Since it's a fancy party?" While we talked about the party, I didn't realize the dressing was over. Then someone came to visit my grandmother-in-law. "I will have this person do your hair and makeup. You will get your hair and makeup done by her." My grandmother-in-law had even taken the trouble to call a hairdresser for today. My grandmother-in-law has been taking care of me for so long. She is my lovely granddaughter. I have to make her look beautiful. Thanks to my grandmother-in-law, I was glamorously dressed. My grandmother-in-law gave me her assurance that my mother-in-law would have no complaints. When I had just finished my preparations, I received a call from my husband that he had arrived at my parents' house. I thanked my grandmother-in-law and decided to go see him. I'll be there as soon as I change my clothes. My grandmother-in-law sent me off. My husband was surprised to see me in gorgeous clothes, and I entered my parents-in-law's house with him. The hall of my parent-in-law's house was already crowded with my mother-in-law's relatives, and the party had already started. My mother-in-law, dressed in an eye-catching bright red dress, was sitting on the top of the table, smiling happily. "Happy birthday, mother-in-law!" I head over to my mother-in-law to greet her. Then I hand her the gift I have prepared for her. My mother-in-law looks at me as if she is assessing me from top to bottom. Then she takes me out of the hall and brings me toward the kitchen. "You! What a cheap dress! I told you to come properly dressed." My mother-in-law complained about my dress more rudely than usual, probably because she was already drunk. The next moment, she splashed a wine glass she was holding onto my dress. The stain on my dress spread rapidly. "You know, it's because you forced yourself to wear a dress. Why don't you wear something with a pattern instead of such a plain one? You really have no taste. That's why I hate people from poor families." My mother-in-law, not caring about my dismay at having ruined my dress, spoke one insulting word after another. She told me to go home because she would not allow me to attend the party in a cheap dress. "This is your mother's." I was so shocked that it was all I could manage to mutter. I was so sad that my grandmother-in-law had prepared all these things for me with all her heart, and now they had all been ruined at once. Whose mother? What about her? What are you talking about? Anyway, I don't want you here today. Just leave my son and go home. My mother-in-law, who did not understand the situation, quickly tried to get me to leave. At that moment, I heard my grandmother-in-law's voice behind me. "What's so cheap? Do you mean my dress?" I turned around, and there she was. She came to me as I had tears welling up. "Oh my God, it's terrible." My grandmother-in-law looked at the stain on my dress and muttered. I was so sorry that all I could do was to apologize to my grandmother-in-law, and I just turned my head down and mouthed an apology. My grandmother said, "It's all right," and dabbed the spot where the wine had been spilled with a handkerchief. My mother-in-law, who was watching this scene, had sobered up and looked very pale. "If you do this way, the stain won't spread. I'll have the stain remover to take care of the rest." My grandmother-in-law looked at me with kind eyes and then turned back to my mother-in-law. "Which dress do you mean by cheap one? This is one I had made a long time ago. It must have cost several $1,000,000. The fabric and the tailoring are first class, just like you love." My mother-in-law rolled her eyes as soon as my grandmother-in-law mentioned the price. I was also surprised that it was so expensive, although I had heard that it was a good one. My grandmother-in-law explained the value of the dress to my mother-in-law in a sarcastic tone. My mother-in-law had soiled a very expensive dress. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it was that expensive." My mother-in-law, who seemed even more upset than I was, replied as if she were trying to squeeze out a response. My grandmother-in-law blamed my mother-in-law even more. How can a person who doesn't know the value of things make fun of other people? You, who only dances around with fancy things and names, you don't know what's really good, do you? You're disgusting. You embarrass me. My mother-in-law, who seemed to have sobered up completely, could not refute my grandmother-in-law's words, and just looked down. People who know what they're talking about understand. You, who only have cheap dresses, don't understand. If you ask me, you are new money, and you have no taste. My grandmother-in-law was extremely sarcastic with my mother-in-law. She said the same things that my mother-in-law used to say to me. My mother-in-law must have felt embarrassed because her face turned bright red. She was just biting her lip in silence. Then, my grandmother-in-law began to lecture my mother-in-law about her attitude towards me. What kind of a thing is it to snub a daughter-in-law who has come from another family? I felt sorry for my mother-in-law, who looked like she was about to cry, and listened to her silently. I'll leave it at that. Me and Isabel won't be attending anymore. Have a good time. After she finished lecturing my mother-in-law for a while, my grandmother-in-law let her go. Her bright red dress, which she had prepared with great enthusiasm for the occasion, looked ridiculous in this situation. Wait here. I have a change of clothes for you at home. I changed into my own clothes, which my grandmother-in-law went to get for me, and went back to my grandmother-in-law's house. My husband also came with me. My husband seemed to be very angry when he heard this story from my grandmother-in-law. My grandparents-in-law, my husband, and I left my parent-in-law's house and went to dinner with just the four of us. We had a good time without worrying about my mother-in-law. After that, my mother-in-law was lectured again by my husband and my grandmother-in-law, who were furious, and they told her not to approach me. She was also restricted from spending money freely. It seems that this happened because of my grandmother-in-law's words that my mother-in-law should learn modesty. At that time, my mother-in-law's face was so pale that I could not look at her. Furthermore, my grandmother-in-law declared at that time that she would give me all her dresses, jewelry, and other valuable things. It doesn't make sense to let someone who doesn't know the value have them, you know. She was very sarcastic with my mother-in-law until the end. I had tried not to say much about it before, but it seems she disliked my mother-in-law's taste for luxury. Later, with a mischievous smile, my grandmother-in-law confessed to me. The wine-stained dress came back to me clean. I was really happy and relieved from the bottom of my heart. I still don't understand the quality of things yet, but I have learned a lot from my grandmother-in-law, who accepted me.